If you grew up watching the Cars movies and you thought the statue in the middle of Radiator Springs was just a harmless little bronze tribute to the town founder, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. Because it's not. It is not that at all. And look, I know how that sounds. I know. But I spent way too long going down this specific rabbit hole, and what I found, it broke something in me a little. So pull up the movie on a second screen if you want, because you're about to watch a Pixar film and feel genuine existential dread. I'm Mr. Blessed, and today we're figuring out what the Stanley Monument in Radiator Springs actually is. Let's start somewhere that doesn't seem related at all, but trust me, it's the most important thing I'm going to say in this entire video. Here's a question nobody asks about the Cars universe. What happens to the body? When a car dies, and cars absolutely die in this franchise, we'll get to that. What happens to the massive, multi-ton metallic corpse? Where does it go? Because here's the thing everyone misses. These are not machines. They are not toys. They are not just metal boxes with googly eyes slapped on the windshields. The biological evidence in the canon is overwhelming and honestly kind of horrifying once you actually look at it. Mater drinks wasabi in Cars 2. He doesn't just malfunction, he experiences a severe biological burning reaction. There are pain receptors firing. There is a working digestive system. We see functional bathrooms, actual toilet facilities for cars, which means digestion produces waste, which means there is a gastrointestinal tract. The cars breathe. They sigh and gasp and scream. They have fleshy tongues. Their pupils dilate. They have genders, they fall in love, they get married, they honeymoon. In Cars 3, Lightning McQueen's 0 to 60 time literally degrades from 2 seconds to 4. 0 seconds as he ages, not because anything broke, but because his internal biological systems are wearing out. You cannot fix that with a wrench. These are living organisms, which means when they die, they leave behind a corpse. A real one. A massive, steel, biological, mechanical corpse. So I need to ask again, what happens to the body? Pixar actually answered this. They answered it in one of the most disturbing deleted scenes I've ever had described to me, and the fact that it was cut from a kid's movie tells you everything. In a sequence titled Lost, originally meant for the first Cars film, Lightning McQueen falls off the highway at night and wanders into a forest. And there, in the dark, he starts bumping into things. The lightning flashes, and he realizes he's surrounded by them. Dead cars, not buried, not memorialized. Just scattered across the ravine floor, rusted out, hollowed, hanging from trees with branches growing directly through their empty windshields and engine bays. Dozens of them, just rotting. The scene culminates with McQueen accidentally ripping the front fascia of the face off one of the corpses and dragging it behind him as he flees, screaming back to the road. Pixar's own production team called that detached piece of dead car an automotive banshee skull. The scene was cut because executives decided it was too psychologically traumatic for a family movie, which tells you Pixar knew exactly what they were building. They built a world with body horror in it, and they just decided to hide most of it. But here's the thing, they didn't hide all of it. They couldn't, because the graveyard forest got canonized later in the short film The Radiator Springs 501-2. It's real. It exists in this universe. There is a forest full of the unburied, rotting, skeletal remains of dead cars just outside Radiator Springs. Now, you know what's also right outside Radiator Springs? The Stanley Monument. And if this civilization has an unburied car graveyard in the forest, the question is not whether corpses can be left in the open. We know they can. The question is what Lizzy specifically chose to do with Stanley's. Okay, I need to talk about Lizzy, because if you think of her as just a cute, forgetful old lady car, you have missed the entire horror show. Lizzy is a 1923 Ford Model T. She is the oldest living resident of Radiator Springs, and the official franchise canon explicitly states that she has dementia, memory loss, cognitive confusion, misremembering names, forgetting things she said moments ago. That's all in there. But what nobody talks about is the pattern of that memory loss. Because here's where it gets genuinely chilling. In the Cars tunes, episode Time Travel Mater, Lizzy in the present day approaches Lightning McQueen, who has just accidentally gotten tangled up in her past, and she thanks him for introducing her to Stanley decades earlier, a thing he technically did through time travel. In the right circumstances, she is completely lucid and emotionally coherent about one thing, and one thing only: Stanley. This is not a coincidence. This is a documented clinical symptom. In severe dementia, deep emotionally resonant long-term memories, especially formative ones tied to profound love or trauma, can remain crystalline while everything else dissolves. Lizzy can't remember what she said 5 minutes ago, but she remembers exactly how Stanley gave her a new radiator cap and water from the spring in 1927 when she broke down in the desert. That memory is locked, preserved, untouchable. Stanley isn't just her husband. He is her entire psychological foundation. The official lore literally states that when Lizzy arrived in 1927, it was love for the town and love for Stanley simultaneously. She equates them. They are the same entity in her mind. Their wedding on April 19, 1929, happened the same day the courthouse and fire department were completed. The founding of the town as a real community and the beginning of her marriage are the same event. So when Stanley died from causes the franchise mysteriously never specifies, just lists as unknown, he didn't just take her husband. He took the entire meaning of the town. He took her reason for existing. And the town was already dying, slowly strangled by the interstate bypass that rerouted all the traffic away. She was losing both of them at the same time. Now here's what I want you to sit with. Radiator Springs has a functioning medical doctor, a judge, and a lawyer living in it. Doc Hudson, Sally Carrera. These are smart, capable individuals. They watched Lizzy's mind fragment in real time, and not one of them has ever challenged what she did with Stanley's body. Why? That question has an answer, and it's the most disturbing thing in this whole video. But first, I need you to actually understand why the statue being a real corpse isn't just a theory. It's the only thing the physical evidence supports. This is the part where I need you to pay attention, because it gets technical, but stay with me. This is where the whole thing falls apart. If the Stanley Monument were a standard bronze statue, the kind any civilization commissions to honor a founder, it would be cast from an alloy of roughly 85 to 95% copper and tin. That's foundry bronze. Standard civic statuary material. Durable. Weather-resistant. Here's what bronze does when it sits outside for decades next to a water fountain. The copper reacts with atmospheric sulfur and moisture. It develops what's called a patina, a protective layer of copper sulfides and carbonates. It turns green, blue-green, sometimes a rich dark brown. That green verdigris is the chemical signature of aged bronze. You've seen it, the Statue of Liberty, any old public monument. It's unavoidable. The Stanley Monument has no green patina. What it has, visible on its joints and undercarriage, are patches of orange-red flaking oxidation. That specific type of degradation, porous, blistering, actively shedding material, is the chemical signature of iron 3 oxide. It's rust. Ferrous red rust. The kind that forms on carbon steel and iron alloys. Bronze does not rust red. It cannot. Bronze does not contain iron. These are mutually exclusive outcomes. Early 20th century automobiles, specifically the kind of steam-powered vehicle Stanley is based on, were constructed from heavy carbon steel and iron. Their chassis, their ladder frames, their body panels, that's the base material. The monument is rusting the way a steel car body rusts, not the way a bronze statue weathers. And it's sitting directly next to a constantly flowing water fountain, the very spring Stanley discovered, which would dramatically accelerate whatever oxidation process is occurring. The only material science consistent conclusion is that the object on that pedestal is made of ferrous automotive steel, not cast bronze, Stanley's actual chassis. And then there's the structural evidence from when McQueen actually rips it off the pedestal. When that statue gets torn free and dragged down the main street, it doesn't crack. It doesn't shatter. The axle points, the weakest spots on any hollow art casting don't snap. Instead, the base of the monument physically plows through the asphalt of the main road, carving a deep trench into it. Do you understand what force that implies? A hollow bronze casting could not do that. It would crumble. The only object that can be dragged at race car torque and still plow through reinforced asphalt is something with the mass, density, and structural integrity of a real automotive chassis, with industrial-grade bolts connecting it to the stone base through its actual factory suspension mounting points. And when it finally snaps back and lands on the pedestal, it makes a screech, not a clang. Not the resonant bell ring of metal striking stone, a screech. The kind of sound that comes from oxidized, dried-out, hollowed steel under severe mechanical stress. The groan of tortured industrial iron. That is not a statue hitting its base. That is the sound of an old corpse being structurally traumatized. Here's what I think happened, and I want you to tell me where this logic breaks down, because I've tried and I can't find a hole in it. Stanley died, unknown causes, and Lizzy, already devastated by the slow death of the town, made a choice that no one in Radiator Springs has ever challenged out loud. She didn't bury him. In the context of their universe, burying Stanley would have required acknowledging that the founder of Radiator Springs, the man who was, in her mind, literally the same thing as Radiator Springs itself, was gone. The town was already dying. That burial would have been the final death. Her mind couldn't absorb it. There's a concept in clinical psychology called ambiguous loss. It describes a situation where the bereaved cannot process a death because the finality refuses to register. The psychological mechanism that should allow acceptance keeps short-circuiting, and the person gets stuck frozen at the moment just before the loss. Lizzy froze. By having Stanley's body hollowed out, sealed, coated in metallic paint to approximate the look of civic statuary, and mounted on a stone pedestal in the center of the town he founded at the exact geographic coordinates of the spring that created everything, she didn't lose him. He didn't leave. He's still there. He's still watching the town. He can't age. He can't rust away. He can't abandon her. The town square is not a public park with a monument in it. It is an open-air mausoleum, and Lizzy has appointed herself the permanent, eternal groundskeeper. This explains everything about how she talks to the statue. During the ending of the first film, while everyone is taking a cruise around the newly revitalized Radiator Springs, Lizzy parks next to the pedestal and starts talking to it. She tells it she misses him. She tells him she wishes he could see the town now. She looks directly at the empty windshield eye sockets and speaks to him like he's listening. In a casual read, that's bittersweet. Sweet old widow talking to her husband's memorial. In the correct read, she is not praying at a symbolic monument. In her fractured mind, she is speaking directly to his physical body, which is right there in front of her, which has always been right there in front of her, because she made sure it would never leave. The cognitive dissonance required to sustain that reality across decades is immense, but dementia helps. The dementia isn't separate from the grief. The dementia is the grief. Her mind is actively dismantling its connection to the present so she can stay in 1929, where the town is alive and Stanley is too. And here's the thing about Red. Red is the town's fire truck. Big, gentle, cries all the time, never speaks. He is religiously, obsessively tending to the flowers around the base of the monument every single day. He weeps when someone disrespects the area. Red is not a groundskeeper maintaining a piece of civic art. That is not the behavior of a municipal employee performing routine landscape maintenance. He is tending to a grave. He is maintaining a sacred site. The intensity of his emotional response is the response of someone who understands exactly what is on that pedestal and considers it a holy obligation to protect it. Now here's the question that actually kept me up, the one that I genuinely could not let go of. Why does the entire town go along with it? Doc Hudson is a medical doctor. He is the town judge. He has the authority and the clinical knowledge to recognize that what Lizzy has done is not normal and not healthy. Sally is a lawyer. Sarge is a military veteran. These are not naive people. They know what's in the town square. So why has nobody done anything? Because confronting the statue would mean confronting themselves. Radiator Springs is a town built entirely on shared grief. Every single person living there was abandoned by the outside world when the interstate went in. Their businesses failed. Their purpose evaporated. They are a community of people who decided, collectively, to keep living in the ruins of something that died. That is, functionally, the same choice Lizzy made about Stanley. They just made it about the town. If Doc Hudson forced a reckoning about the statue, insisted on a proper burial, demanded the monument come down, He would be forcing the town to confront the fact that some things do not come back. That grief has to end somewhere. That you cannot preserve a dead thing and call it alive. He couldn't do that to her. He understood with clinical certainty that it would destroy whatever was left of Lizzy's mind. So they made an unspoken agreement. All of them. They would maintain the fiction. They would treat the monument as normal civic art. They would decorate it during Stanley days and stand around it and smile. They became, collectively, the caretakers of a delusion, a shared, protective, benevolent lie that the whole town agreed to live inside. This is why McQueen's arrival is so violently received. When he rips the statue off the pedestal and drags it through town, the townspeople aren't upset about property damage. They're not upset about the road. They are furious because an outsider just desecrated a corpse, violated an unspoken community covenant, and came within seconds of shattering the fragile psychological reality that the entire town had spent decades quietly agreeing to protect. Fillmore's stare in the courtroom. Doc's immediate furious demand that McQueen leave. Those are not the reactions of people upset about a broken fountain. That is the reaction of a community defending a secret. There is one more layer to this, and it's the theological one. Supplementary lore for this universe describes an organized religion, jokingly but seriously called Catholicism, that includes a formalized funerary practice. The accepted, culturally mandated method of disposing of a deceased vehicle is to place the body in a hydraulic car crusher. The theological reasoning being that the physical form must be completely compacted and destroyed so the soul can be compressed enough to ascend to the afterlife. If that's true, and the canonical existence of cars being executed by Crusher and Cars 2 suggests it is the known use of that technology, then Lizzy didn't just refuse to bury Stanley. She refused to perform the sacrament. She specifically prevented his soul from going through the accepted theological channel for reaching the afterlife. And in the Radiator Springs 501-2, Stanley appears as a literal ghost. His spirit is still in Radiator Springs. It has never left. It is specifically permanently tethered to the physical space of the town he founded. There is an in-universe theological framework that says if you don't perform the proper rites, the soul can't move on. And Stanley has not moved on. He's still there, haunting the spring he discovered, watching over the town, trapped by grief not his, but Lizzy's. She didn't mean to trap him. She just couldn't let go. And the consequence, in the logic of this universe, is that neither of them got to rest. The town got a ghost, and Lizzy got to keep talking to the empty shell of the man she loved. In the center of the town they built together, until the day her engine finally stops. The monument outside the Radiator Springs courthouse is not a bronze casting. The metallurgy doesn't support it. The structural physics don't support it. The biological reality of the universe doesn't support it. What it is a preserved, hollowed, sealed, and mounted steel chassis, the actual physical body of the town's founder, bolted to a stone pedestal by a woman whose grief was so profound it bent the rules of death itself. Pixar made a movie for kids about talking cars, and buried inside it, hidden under the neon lights and the racing and the merchandise, is a story about a woman so shattered by loss that she taxidermied her husband and put him in the town square, and a town so defined by collective grief that they looked at that and said, yeah, that's fine. We get it. That statue doesn't honor Stanley. It imprisons him, and it always has.